The village of Abanley was alive with color and sound. Children ran barefoot through dusty paths, chasing each other as the sun dipped low in the sky. Women sat in circles, weaving baskets and laughing softly while men returned from their farms, their hoes slung over tired shoulders. From the outside, the village seemed like a place untouched by darkness, rich in tradition, filled with laughter, and bound together by stories told under the stars. But behind the beauty of Abanley lived a shadow that every child grew up hearing about. A story whispered in hushed tones whenever the night grew too quiet. It was the story of the midnight dance. When the moon swelled full and white, drums were said to echo from the thick forest at the edge of the village. The sound was soft at first, like a heartbeat carried on the wind, but it grew louder as the night deepened. The elders said those who followed the sound never returned the same, some vanished, others came back hollow-eyed, their laughter gone forever. Beware of the midnight dance, the old ones always warned. Their voices carried the weight of generations, and their words were spoken with fear. Never follow the drums. Never step into the circle. For dawn does not forgive the dancers. Children shivered at the warning, pulling their mats closer to the fire. Mothers clutched their babies tighter. Fathers nodded in grim silence, remembering neighbors and friends who once ignored those words and were never seen again. The legend wrapped itself around the village like a shadowy veil, respected and feared by all. All, except one. Adana, a young woman of 19, sat often by herself under the large iroko tree in the center of the village. Her eyes, though bright, carried a sadness that made her seem older than her years. She had lost her brother 2 seasons ago, a boy of 15 who had wandered out at night and never returned. Some whispered that he had heard the drums and gone into the forest. Others said he was simply lost to wild beasts. But Adana never believed either story fully. Her heart burned with unanswered questions. Why had her brother gone out? What had really happened to him? And why did the elders always speak of the midnight dance with such fear, yet refuse to explain its true nature? Curiosity clawed at her spirit. She was adventurous, bold, and restless in ways that unsettled her mother. While most girls her age dreamed of marriage or of raising children, Adana dreamed of knowing the truth even if it hurt. Still, she was torn. She respected the wisdom of her people. The elders had kept the village safe for generations. Their words were not to be taken lightly, but every time she heard the whispers of the midnight dance, her heart raced. She felt a pull, as if the mystery itself was calling her name. One evening, as the last orange glow of the sun stretched across the land, Adana's grandmother sat by the fire and told the tale once more. The old woman's voice was raspy but strong. "The drums you hear at midnight," she said, "are not made by human hands. They call the living to dance with the dead. Those who answer the call pay a price they cannot return from. Remember, child, it is better to live with questions than to die with answers." Adana lowered her eyes, but inside her chest a storm was brewing. The fear in her grandmother's voice only deepened her hunger to know. She remembered her brother's laughter, his warm smile, and the way he vanished without goodbye. Something in her heart whispered that the truth of his disappearance was tied to the dance. The night air grew colder, and the wind rattled the leaves of the iroko tree. Adana hugged her knees to her chest, staring at the shadows around her. Respect for tradition warred with the aching need in her soul. She did not know it yet, but her choice, whether to obey or to seek, would decide more than just her fate. It would uncover secrets that had been buried in Abanley for generations. And once those secrets were revealed, there would be no turning back. The story of the midnight dance was not just a tale in Abanley, it was a shadow stitched into the very heartbeat of the village. 4 generations, the elders told it with trembling lips, as if even repeating the words could awaken something dangerous. On nights when the moon was full and the sky glowed like silver, the sound of drums was said to rise from the deep forest. The beat came soft at first, like footsteps hidden in the wind, but with each passing hour it grew louder, steady, fierce, and impossible to ignore. Those who dared to listen for too long felt the rhythm crawl beneath their skin, pulling at their feet, whispering to their hearts. The elders warned, never follow the sound. They said the drums belonged to spirits, restless souls who had died with unfulfilled desires. Once every year, the spirits returned, demanding company for their eternal dance. The brave who followed were never seen the same way again. Some vanished forever. Others stumbled back at dawn, their bodies alive but their souls emptied. These returned dancers spoke little, their eyes dull and distant, as though part of them was still trapped in the forest circle. They walked among the living but belonged to another world. "Beware of temptation," the elders said. "The drums do not call the body, they call the weakness inside you. Whatever hunger hides in your heart, the dance will feed it, then take it away." The tale was both a warning and a mirror. People whispered it to their children to keep them safe, but deep inside, everyone knew the danger came not from the forest alone, it came from within. That was why, whenever the drums began, the village shut down like a tomb. Doors were barred, fires burned low, and no one spoke above a whisper. The path leading into the forest, wide and open by day, became a forbidden road by night. Even animals avoided it. Cows would pull back from its edge, dogs whined when the sound carried through the air. Fear ruled those nights. But fear also kept the people alive. For Adana, however, the story was not enough. Each time she heard the legend, her chest tightened with both dread and longing. She remembered her brother, the way he had disappeared 2 seasons ago without a trace. Some swore he had been brave and foolish enough to follow the drums. Others said he had fallen prey to wild animals. But Adana could not silence the thought that his fate was tied to the midnight dance. When the elders spoke of souls taken, her heart clenched. Could her brother's spirit be trapped among those dancers, forced to move until dawn stole his breath? This thought cut her like a knife. It was grief mixed with curiosity, sorrow tied to restless defiance. The midnight dance was more than a legend to her, it was a key that might unlock the truth she had been denied for too long. She began to study how people reacted whenever the story was told. The elders' voices always trembled, as though they had seen too much. The mothers clutched their children, whispering prayers under their breath. The fathers kept silent, their jaws tight with old memories. No one dared question, no one dared dig deeper. It was as if the legend itself was protected by fear, and anyone who asked too much risked becoming part of it. But Adana was not like the others. Her grief gave her courage. Her love for her brother made her reckless. And her restless spirit, the part of her that longed for truth, pushed her closer and closer to the path the others avoided. One night, sitting by the fire as her grandmother retold the story, Adana noticed something she had missed before. When the old woman said, "Some who return are not truly alive," her eyes shifted quickly toward the forest, as if remembering a face she once knew. It was a fleeting look, but Adana caught it. Her grandmother had seen it. She had witnessed the curse with her own eyes. The realization struck Adana like a storm. The midnight dance was not just a story told to frighten children, it was real. It was dangerous, yes, but it was also the answer to her deepest wound. That night she lay awake, staring at the roof of her mother's hut. The drums were silent, but her heart beat to their rhythm anyway. She thought of her brother's laughter, the way it had once filled their home, and the silence that followed his disappearance. Her grief whispered, "Find the truth." Her fear whispered, "Stay away." The war inside her grew louder than any drumbeat. As dawn crept across the horizon, Adana made a silent vow. She would not live her life hiding from shadows. She would uncover the truth of the midnight dance, no matter the cost. And though she did not yet know it, that vow would lead her into a night that would test her courage, her love, and her soul. Adana could not shake the vow she had whispered to herself. Every night since she had heard her grandmother's trembling words, the thought of the midnight dance clung to her like a shadow. By day, she worked in the fields and carried water with the others. She laughed when the children played and helped her mother grind millet at dusk. Yet beneath her smile burned a fire that would not go out. The drums had not yet returned that season, but in her heart, Adana felt them faint, distant, like a memory pressing against her ribs. The more she tried to ignore it, the louder the pull became. Her heart whispered, "What if the truth waits in the forest?" Her fear whispered, "What if the forest takes you too?" This was her war, and it grew sharper each day. One evening, she found herself alone with Elder Chaik, one of the oldest men in the village. His back was bent with age, but his eyes still carried the weight of many stories. Adana hesitated before speaking, her hands trembling as she poured him water. "Elder," she asked softly, "is it true? The midnight dance, do the spirits really come for the living?" Chaik's face darkened. He leaned close, his voice low, sharp as a blade. "Child, do not ask such questions. Curiosity is the path to ruin. The drums are not for us. They are a curse, and those who chase them are already lost." His words struck her like cold water. But even as he spoke, she saw something flicker in his eyes, not just fear, but memory. He knew more than he admitted. Yet his warning was final. "Silence, Adana. Obey the old ways. Do not invite death into your life." The weight of his words lingered. But instead of silencing her, they deepened her hunger. If the truth was so dangerous, why keep it hidden? What was he protecting her from, the forest, or the secret buried in it? Later that night, her closest friend, If, slipped into her hut. If had grown up beside her like a sister, and she could read Adana's face as easily as the sky before rain. "You've been restless," If whispered, worry heavy in her tone. "Don't tell me you're thinking about the dance." Adana's lips parted, but she could not deny it. If's eyes filled with tears. "Adana, don't. I already lost your brother. I cannot lose you too." Her voice cracked, and the words stabbed deep into Adana's chest. She remembered the nights they both cried after her brother vanished. If had held her, whispered prayers, and begged the ancestors for answers. The thought of causing her friend the same pain again nearly broke her resolve. But the longing would not die. "I have to know, If," Adana whispered. "If there's even a chance, if he's still out there somehow, I can't turn away." If shook her head, pressing her hands over her friend's. "Then I'll beg you again, don't go. Don't let the forest take another piece of this family." The fear in If's voice wrapped around Adana like chains, but inside, her heart kept pounding the rhythm of the drums. The next day, as the sun bled red across the horizon, Adana crossed paths with Obinna, the loud-mouthed youth who had mocked her brother when he vanished. His smirk cut her like glass. "They say you've been asking about the dance," he teased. "Perhaps you'll be braver than your brother. Or perhaps you'll disappear like him too." Anger burned hot in Adana's veins. His words were cruel, but beneath them lay a challenge, one she could not ignore. Obinna's mockery only sharpened her desire to prove herself, not only to him but to the entire village. That night, strange things began to stir. Adana walked home and noticed footprints along the dusty path, clear at first, but fading as if swallowed by the earth. A sudden wind rushed past, carrying whispers that sounded almost like voices. The dogs in the village howled without reason, their eyes wide, ears pressed back. Even the cattle stamped nervously, refusing to graze near the forest's edge. The signs were small but undeniable. The air itself seemed to warn her, yet also beckon her forward. When she lay down, sleep would not come. The whispers filled her hut, slipping through the cracks like smoke. She felt caught between two worlds, one of safety, where tradition ruled, and one of mystery, where her brother's fate and perhaps her own waited to be discovered. Her heart hammered with a decision not yet made, but one that felt closer with each breath. She closed her eyes, her mind heavy with fear and longing. Somewhere in the distance, faint and fleeting, she thought she heard it, the first echo of a drum. And with it, her choice drew nearer. The night had come. The villagers sensed it long before the first drumbeat. The air was thick, heavy, as if even the wind held its breath. Clouds had cleared, leaving the moon brighter than it had ever seemed, pouring silver light across the thatched roofs and dusty paths. Every shadow stretched long and thin, reaching out like fingers across the ground. Children clung to their mothers. Men gathered silently at the fires, avoiding one another's eyes. No one spoke of it aloud, but everyone knew, tonight was the night of the midnight dance. Adana sat in her hut, knees drawn to her chest, heart pounding louder than the crickets outside. For weeks, she had fought with herself, torn between fear and the aching pull of curiosity. But tonight, the drums had begun, slow, steady, ancient. Each beat vibrated through the earth, through her body, until it felt as though her very soul was being summoned. She thought of Elder Chaik's warning. She thought of If's tears. She thought of Obina's cruel laugh. And she thought of her brother, swallowed by this very night, his fate sealed by the forest's darkness. Her breath trembled. Her hands shook. But her feet would not remain still. Quietly, she rose. Outside, the village was hushed, all doors barred, all fires dimmed. The only light was the moon and the faint glow of distant torches flickering at the edge of the trees. The drums grew louder, rolling like thunder from deep inside the forest. Adana's chest tightened, but she stepped forward anyway, each stride heavier than the last. She passed the animal pens and noticed how the goats shifted nervously, stamping their hooves. The dogs whimpered, refusing to look toward the forest. Even the trees nearest the village seemed to bow away, as though shrinking from the call. Her bare feet touched the narrow path leading into the woods. It was a trail she had walked many times in daylight, to fetch firewood or chase after goats. But tonight, the path was changed. Moonlight spilled between the trees, casting strange shapes on the ground, shapes that seemed to move when she wasn't looking. Her heart beat in time with the drums. Beadum. Beadum. Faster. Louder. Closer. As she pressed deeper into the forest, the air grew colder, sharper, as if every breath cut into her lungs. The branches swayed though no wind stirred, and the leaves whispered secrets she could not understand. Then came the lights. Tiny glimmers, like fireflies, floated ahead of her, but their glow was wrong. Too bright. Too steady. They did not flicker like insects, they pulsed, almost in rhythm with the drums, leading her deeper into the forest. Adana's pulse quickened. Her legs trembled, yet she followed. At last, she reached a clearing. And there, under the swollen moon, they danced. A circle of figures, men and women, young and old, moved with a rhythm that seemed beyond human. Their garments shimmered in strange colors, glowing faintly as if woven from light itself. Their faces were blank, eyes rolled back, mouths open in silent cries. Yet their bodies bent and twisted in perfect unison, faster than the drums, stranger than any dance she had ever seen. Their shadows stretched unnaturally long across the clearing, crawling across the ground like living creatures, bending and writhing as though dancing on their own. Adana froze, her breath caught in her throat. Every part of her screamed to run. Yet she could not look away. The drums pounded harder. The circle spun faster. Some dancers lifted their arms to the sky, and the light around them flared brighter. Others fell to the ground, shaking violently, only to rise again and continue moving as though nothing had happened. She thought she recognized a face, a boy who had vanished 2 years ago, his family left in mourning. But his eyes, they were empty, as if his soul had been carved out. Another woman's garment tore as she spun, and Adana's chest clenched. It was her mother's cloth, the same pattern she had sewn for her brother before his disappearance. Her knees weakened. Her eyes stung with tears. Was he here? Was he one of them? The thought nearly broke her. Adana ducked behind a tree, pressing her back to the rough bark, her chest heaving. She wanted to scream, but her voice was trapped. She wanted to flee, but her legs refused to move. The dance was pulling her in, as if her heartstrings were caught in its rhythm. Every beat seemed to whisper her name. Every shadow seemed to reach for her. She pressed her hand to her chest, whispering prayers to the ancestors, begging for strength. Yet still, her eyes turned back toward the circle. The more she watched, the stronger the pull became, a force deep inside her blood, something old, something dangerous. She thought of Ife's warning. She thought of Elder Chaik's fear. She thought of her brother's face. And though terror wrapped around her like a cloak, a single thought echoed louder than the drums. The truth is here. She crouched lower, her body trembling, hiding in the shadows. The dancers whirled, the drums thundered, the moon burned white above them. Her heart raced with both fear and fascination. And though she remained hidden, she knew, this was only the beginning. For once the sun rose, nothing in her life or in the village would ever be the same. The drums thundered louder, shaking the ground beneath Adana's feet. What had begun as a slow rhythm was now a storm of sound, faster and faster, until it felt like the earth itself was beating a restless heart. The dancers moved in time, spinning wildly, their limbs bending in ways no human body should. Some leapt into the air and hovered a moment too long before landing again. Others twisted backward until their spines arched unnaturally, yet they did not break. Their eyes remained rolled back, their mouths open in silent cries as the rhythm dragged them forward. Adana's hands clutched the bark of the tree where she hid. Her nails dug into the wood, but she barely felt it. Her whole body trembled. Her breath came in sharp gasps. And yet, she could not look away. It was then she saw it. Not all the dancers were villagers. At first, she thought her eyes were playing tricks, but no, their faces were different. Too pale, too thin, their skin glowing faintly under the moonlight. Their movements were sharper, less human, as though pulled by invisible strings. Shadows clung to them like smoke, stretching long and curling at the edges. Spirits. The realization struck her like a blade. These were not only the missing villagers, they were the lost ones. Some looked young, others ancient, their forms shifting between flesh and something less real. Their eyes were hollow, yet glowing faintly, like dying embers. And then she saw him. Her brother. For one heart-stopping moment, she thought it was truly him, alive and whole. But as he spun past, the truth tore at her chest. His face was gaunt, his eyes lifeless, his movements stiff as if chained to the rhythm. Around his neck, the small leather charm he had worn since childhood still hung, the one their mother had made for him. Adana's breath broke into a sob. She pressed her hand to her mouth to silence it. Her knees threatened to give way. His here, she whispered to herself. But his not. Her voice died. The truth was too cruel. The drums pounded harder. The dance grew more frantic. And with each beat, Adana felt it inside her chest, a pull, a command, a calling. Her heart leapt in rhythm. Her feet twitched against the soil. Her fingers began to loosen their grip on the tree. It was as if the dance itself reached out to her, whispering, "Join us. Be free of your pain. Come where the lost find rest." Her body swayed without her willing it. Sweat dripped from her brow as she fought the urge to step forward. And then, the drums changed. They no longer sounded like hollow wood. They sounded like voices. Deep, echoing voices that knew her secrets, her wounds. One drumbeat spoke of her brother's laughter and how it was stolen. Another pounded the memory of her father's death. Another called out the shame she carried, the nights she blamed herself for not stopping her brother. Every strike of the drum seemed to say, "We know your pain. We can take it away. Just step into the circle." Adana shook her head violently, tears streaming down her face. "No," she whispered. "No, I can't." But the temptation grew unbearable. The dancers spun faster. Some blurred into streaks of light, others flickered in and out of sight as though their bodies belonged to two worlds at once. The spirits leaned closer to the mortals among them, their faces stretching into smiles too wide, too sharp. The mortals' eyes, once frightened, now softened, as though surrendering. And Adana understood the truth. This was no dance of joy. This was a trap. Those who stepped into the circle never returned, because their souls were taken. At dawn, when the last drumbeat faded, there would be nothing left of them but shadows. She pressed her hand hard against her chest, her heart hammering as though it too wanted to escape. Her brother's face flashed again, spinning past her. She almost cried out his name, almost broke cover. For a split second, she leaned forward, her foot brushing the edge of the clearing. The pull was overwhelming. If she just stepped forward, all her grief could end. The drums promised release, promised reunion, promised peace. But deep inside, another voice rose, quiet but firm. If you step in, you will not come back. You will join him, but you will lose yourself. At dawn, you will belong to them. Her nails dug into her palm until blood pricked her skin. She bit her lip, shaking her head, refusing to give in. "I won't," she whispered, though her voice trembled with doubt. Still, the temptation lingered, thick as the smoke of a fire. The drums thundered. The dancers whirled. The shadows crawled closer. And Adana clung to the tree, her soul pulled in two directions, between the unbearable pain of staying and the dangerous comfort of surrender. She was still on the outside. But for how long? The night was breaking. The moonlight faded, and the first whispers of dawn stretched across the sky. But in the forest clearing, terror still reigned. The drums no longer sang, they screamed. Each beat struck the air like a thunderclap, driving the dancers into madness. Their movements grew frantic, twisting and snapping like broken puppets. Breathless, desperate, yet unable to stop. They were no longer people, they were shadows chained to a rhythm older and darker than life itself. And then came the horror. Faces emerged from the blur of bodies, faces once known, once loved. Friends, rivals, and even the face of a soul long mourned. Their eyes were empty, their smiles shattered, yet they danced, bound by the curse. The sky brightened, and with it, the truth. At the first touch of sunlight, the drums reached their peak, violent, merciless. Then came silence. A silence so heavy it crushed the breath from the air. The dancers froze. For a single heartbeat, the world held still. Then, one by one, they fell. Some collapsed lifeless to the ground. Others crumbled into dust, scattered by the morning wind. Still more vanished in wisps of smoke, their cries dissolving into the dawn. Their souls were gone, devoured by the curse of the midnight dance. But survival did not mean safety. The dance reached for more. It reached for the living. The pull was fierce, almost unbearable. The rhythm whispered through the veins, promising release, demanding surrender. For one terrifying moment, it seemed another soul would be taken, another life lost. Yet the will to resist burned brighter than the drums. With a final, desperate fight, the grasp of the curse was broken. The clearing erupted into silence. Dust and stillness remained where shadows had spun. The dance was over. The night was gone. But the cost was unbearable. Where once stood familiar faces, now there was nothing, only ash, only absence. Survival had left behind no triumph, only heartbreak. And in the silence of dawn, one truth remained. The dance takes everything. It feeds on longing, on sorrow, on the reckless pull of temptation. It promises wonder but delivers only ruin. The sun rose higher, casting its warmth on an empty clearing. The world moved on. But the memory of that night, of the drums, of the faces lost, would never fade. Because the curse of the midnight dance was not only in the forest. It was in the heart. And the heart would never forget. The sun had risen, but its light felt weak, almost fragile, as though even the heavens mourned what had been lost. Each step back toward the village was heavy, dragged down by the weight of forbidden knowledge. The forest was behind, but its echoes clung, drums that would never stop beating inside the heart. The village lay still. Not a rooster crowed, not a child laughed. Doors remained closed, smoke did not rise from kitchens. It was as if every soul inside already knew. They were waiting, dreading, mourning, before the truth had even been spoken. The path emptied into the village square. And there, the elders stood. Wrinkled faces turned toward the lone figure returning from the woods. Their eyes, sharp with wisdom, softened into sorrow. No words passed between them. They did not ask. They only looked, and in that look was understanding. The pale skin, the trembling hands, the haunted eyes, these told the story no tongue dared speak. The curse had been witnessed. The secret was no longer hidden. From the shadows of a doorway, a figure broke free. A friend. Or a sibling. Their voice cracked as they rushed forward, torn between relief and fear. You lived. You lived. They clutched tightly, but when they pulled back, their own face filled with terror at what they saw in those hollow eyes. What did you see? The voice trembled, almost begging for an answer, yet terrified of the truth. The silence was heavier than words. For how could the horror be spoken? How could the sight of familiar faces dancing into dust be described? Tears welled, but the survivor only shook their head. The friend fell quiet, their relief swallowed by dread. Behind them, whispers rose among the villagers. Some thanked the spirits for sparing a life. Others cursed the curiosity that had brought such knowledge home. The elders lifted their staffs, signaling the crowd to hush. Their gaze lingered on the shaken one who had returned. No lecture, no scolding, no anger. Only grief. For they knew the curse was real, and once seen, it never let go. The drums were silent now. But in the heart of the one who had returned, they would beat forever. The village soon returned to its rhythm. Children ran again, fires were lit, and life seemed to move forward. But for the one who had walked into the forest and returned, there was no peace. Each sunrise was a reminder of that night. Each drum of the pestle-pounding grain sounded too much like the cursed rhythm. Each laugh in the distance carried the weight of voices now silenced forever. The question pressed heavier than sleep. Should the truth be spoken? Should the secret be shared? To warn others would mean breaking the silence that generations had honored. Yet to keep it hidden meant carrying the burden alone, watching as others remained blind to the danger. Every glance from the elders was a warning. Their silence said, "Obey. Do not stir the curse." Their eyes told the story they had all known once, long ago, and had chosen silence to protect the living. But the heart did not rest. Memories of that circle of dancers haunted every thought. Among them were faces once loved, swallowed by the dawn. To stay quiet felt like betrayal. To speak felt like defiance. The soul was torn, caught between fear and duty. Nights grew heavier. Dreams replayed the drums, the wild movements, the ash dissolving into the morning air. Sometimes, in those dreams, the feet would move unwillingly, drawn into the dance once more. Waking brought no relief, only the terror that one day, the dreams might not end. And yet, through the torment, a truth began to form. Curiosity had led to danger. Disobedience had opened the door to grief. The stories, the warnings, the traditions, they were not chains meant to bind. They were shields meant to guard. What had once felt like superstition now revealed itself as wisdom, bought with the price of countless souls. The lesson was bitter, but it was clear. Respect for the old ways was not weakness. It was survival. And sometimes, silence was not cowardice, but protection. Still, one truth could not be ignored: the curse was not gone. For as the nights passed, a sound would rise faintly in the distance. Barely there, like a whisper carried on the wind. A rhythm low, steady, and haunting. The echo of drums. And with it came the chilling reminder: the midnight dance was never truly over. It waited, patient, eternal, calling the curious, the broken, the bold. So the warning lived on, not in loud cries, but in hushed voices passed by firelight. A warning older than memory itself.